And then you do have this embarrassment of riches at receiver. And
wait. I need to pause you there. When was the last time we said that about the Chicago
never,
Bears?
literally never. I've said this.
Musa Muhammad.
I think I said this on Gojo and Golic. Like, this version of the Chicago Bears, I don't know her.
And speaking of getting the party started,
for the victory lap though. They ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came through the front door. Ask me if I stress overcome, what for? Train on the trees, please walk my sycamore. Touch burning sands, cross lands and stormy shore seasons in the yeah. Switch gears, with keeping haters in the rear. After blood, sweat and tears and my goal so near. I see my victory so clear. I see my victory so clear. It's a J, we break through. 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 It's a J, we break through.
It's time for everybody's favorite podcast covering the NFL and Formula One exclusively, and up until this point, the only podcast covering the NFL and Formula One exclusively. It's time for the Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Barie, and joining me as always, up in the left-hand corner, if you're watching on Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube, it's Nick Shook, the bald behemoth holding down the fort in Cleveland, Ohio. And up in the right-hand corner, we've got, she's not sweating this time around, but the Canadian Queen, Katie Caldwell.
Yes, I am.
Yes,
It's still
yes,
very hot
okay.
in here, Sean.
I was going to say, it's at least 25 degrees Celsius, which is, as I'm led to believe, warm.
No, same as last week. We're in the 30s in my
Oh,
condo.
we're in the 30s.
It's miserable. No AC. Let's do this.
Let's go. It's episode 40 of the Gridiron Podcast. We are sorry for that, Katie, but we'll move this along. Maybe the breeze of this podcast will cool you down because it's just going to get hot in here. Because, guys, you know what today is? Do you know what today is?
July 16th.
It is. It's the start of the annual Gridiron Podcast NFL Division Previews, guys. We do it every year, and with the season being 8 weeks out, it's time to get things rolling. As always, we appreciate you listening, watching, wherever you are. As always, drop us a like, drop us a subscribe, maybe give us a 5-star review. You can even email us now. Our email address has not changed. It's at the bottom of your screen if you're watching. It's the Gridiron Podcast 3. Damn those other two. The Gridiron Podcast 3 at gmail.com. We've been getting some emails. We do appreciate it. We try to answer back everyone we can. Actually, so far, we have answered everyone we can. Also, shout out to the, I don't know the Redditors. I'm not big on Reddit, so I don't really know this, but we have noticed that a couple of you have found your way to our podcast via Reddit because of Nick's connections with the Around the NFL podcast. So shout out to you guys. Welcome. Backdoor subscribers. We like it.
Sean, that had big data. Does anybody know how to post videos to Facebook? Energy. Like
I just posted my first
Redditors.
TikToker in like a year today. So baby steps.
Look it up on the Google tube.
How do you Google Siri? How do you Google TikTok? Anyway, guys, it is our NFL division preview launch. So we're going to start things off in the NFC North. And who do we know that covers the NFC North like nobody's business? We've got someone in the waiting room. She's a recurring guest here on the Gridiron Podcast, formerly the Sean and Shook Podcast. It's NFL or Fox on NFL analyst, reporter. I butchered that.
Reporter, whichever one.
Welcome back.
NFL on Fox. Thank you, guys. I didn't realize I was your first one. We're getting back into the swing of things together.
We are.
And best friend of the show. You've been on what, 3 times now?
I think this is my 3rd time, yeah.
It's a record. It is a record.
You're special to us, so
we
have to start off
that's for sure.
Yeah.
Sean, you were there in spirit, but it just feels like it was yesterday. The 3 of us were together in the F1 paddock in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah, how apt. I didn't even think about the fact that, it was at the F1 paddock.
Yeah, weird Gridiron Podcast moment for us with that.
Right.
Where the Super Bowl media party was.
Sean,
it
where were
feels
you?
like the 3 of us were just together.
I was here in Florida, Nick. I was here in Florida. Having severe FOMO because I know I knew all y'all were hanging out together. So
Well, actually, I've hung out with Nick and Sean before. I've now hung out with Nick and Katie. So now I need to just hang out with Sean and Katie at some point or another, and then we can make Nick feel left out.
Yeah.
First, I need to meet Sean in person.
That is true. Yeah, Katie and I.
Sean and I've never met.
Yeah, we've done this podcast for like 2.5 years together. Never met in person. We are scattered. I'm here in Florida. Carmen, you're now in California.
I am. I'm in LA.
Yeah, Nick's up in Ohio, and then Katie's in British Columbia. So we are literally scattered to the four winds.
Oh yeah.
But we're not going to be scattered to the four winds today because we're talking the NFC North. Let's get going. We're going to start off with the reigning division champs, which seems really weird to say, the Detroit Lions. How we do this, guys, is every year I'll read off their schedule, and then after I read off their schedule, I will give you a win total, and you got to guess over or under, and we'll just kind of throw it around and give our impressions. We're going to lean heavy on Carmen for this one because, I mean, this is her division. This is the one she grew up watching. This is the one she covers.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is going to be fun. We'll start off with, again, weird to say, the division champs, the Detroit Lions. Week 1, at home against the Rams. Week 2, at home against the Buccaneers. A nice little NFC divisional round rematch. At Arizona, week 3, home against Seattle, week 4, bye week. I always hate an early bye week. Always hate an early bye week.
Yeah.
Then on the road, 4 of their next 5 against Dallas, Minnesota, back home against Tennessee, on the road against Green Bay and Houston, home for Jacksonville, away for Indy week 12, 13, home against the Bears, home against the Packers in 14, 15, home against Buffalo. Those are 3 big matchups we could see coming down the pipe. And then rounding things off that week 16, no, not rounding things off, counting wrong now. Week 16 at Soldier Field, week 17 in San Fran, and then week 18 home to finish the season off against the Vikings. That being said, this is obviously a high-powered team. They went all the way to the NFC Championship game last year, winning 12 games. 12-5 was the record. Over under 11.5. Katie, we'll start off with you.
Over, baby.
All right.
Guys, I think we're going to see another big season from the Lions. I hope so. I love them. I love Dan Campbell. Jared Goff is fun to watch in the year of our Lord 2024. I never thought I'd be saying that. I have a great time watching the Lions, and the way it ended, they were up in that game, 24-7 against San Francisco, didn't win the game. They've largely ran it back with the same team. You have to think they're thinking Super Bowl or bust this season. I have 12-5, but I could even go higher than that. Carmen, is this their division to lose? I'm just so stoked to watch the Lions again. I would still run the wall for Dan Campbell. Still.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I love watching them and getting to be in this locker room a couple of times. They have a special group. They really, really do. They have all the intangibles on top of the talent and the coaching that we've seen, which is just as important when it comes to talking about the elite of the elite and guys that can actually make a Super Bowl run. If you don't think Dan Campbell is poking the bear every chance he gets, saying you were a half away from the Super Bowl last year and it was ripped away from you. Do you remember how that felt? I mean, all of these guys were pissed. I was in that locker room after they lost, and not a single one of them was grateful to have made it that far. Every single person was like, hey, no, I'm mad. And we wanted this. We know we were capable of this. That defensive secondary was probably the weakest point for the last couple of seasons, honestly, in Detroit. So they went out, and not only did they get traded for Carlton Davis from Tampa, but with their first 2 picks in the draft, Brad Holmes took corners. And I talked to the guys over there about both Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw. Rakestraw, they were super excited about just because they didn't think he was going to be there at that point. And that's why Brad Holmes went up and got him. So you now are going to field a full secondary, a deep secondary. And with the rest of the team returning, with Ben Johnson still being there and all the versatile weapons they have on offense, it's a really fun team. And I think if anybody can do it, the Lions can, except I do think that the Packers, they're nobody's underdog anymore. Yep. I know I'm not going to make a prediction as to who wins this division between the Packers and the Lions. I think it's one of those 2 teams that's going to end up on the top, but I'm going to take the over for the Lions as far as their schedule goes. Because I think that they can pretty easily win 12 games with their schedule. It's going to be hard down the stretch, though, with some teams, depending on what Minnesota is by that point in the season. But getting that NFC Championship rematch that late in the season against the Niners is going to be very interesting, and I think there's going to be some real implications in that game heading into the postseason.
Absolutely right. I think every time that we talk about a team that came off of a banner year, a year in which they not only met expectations, but sometimes they exceed expectations. I always think, because I'm a cynic, when is the other shoe going to drop, and what is that shoe? What's going to cause it to drop? And as I look at the Lions and I look at their depth chart, their biggest weakness last year, like you just said, Carmen, was their secondary, and it's incredibly deep. Like, it's not just talented, it's 2, and sometimes at some positions 3 deep. Like, names that you would see on the field consistently with contenders are second string right now. And if that's your biggest weakness, suddenly you're prepared for the long haul over the course of the season, because we know injuries happen to everybody. I love Terrion Arnold. I love that as a first-round pick. The guy had such a commanding presence at the podium in Indianapolis at the Combine. And, he's a player that I think is a plug-and-play guy. He's just all the skill set that he has and the fundamentals that he plays with are just going to translate really well. I don't think he's going to be necessarily an elite corner, but he's going to be a damn good corner. And that answers a huge issue for them, as well as, like you said, the acquisition of Carlton Davis. And everything offensively basically returns. And you kept your offensive coordinator. So every time I try to poke holes in the Lions, I just keep getting rejected, like I'm trying to poke a hole in a dam that's got no cracks in it. So I'm going with the over 2. Back of my head, I'm like, are you certain? Watch out for that disaster scenario, but I just don't see one. They're the kings of the division. It's not going to be easy. I'm not saying they run away with it by any means. It's going to be challenging because I look at all these teams. I don't know what Minnesota is going to be. Chicago has a lot of optimism. We'll get there. And Green Bay is a legit contender in that division. But right now, as I look at it on paper, there's no reason I should be questioning this team. So we're going with the over.
I feel like I made this round a little too easy in the over-under. I'm also going for the over because there's one thing talent does. It wins you games. It consistently wins you games. But culture wins championships. And that is what Dan Campbell is building in Detroit, which, again, seems weird to think because my entire life, the Lions have just been a doormat to the rest of the NFL, a punching bag, the little orphan Annie. Like, it's just whatever euphemism you want to use. The Lions have been it, and they're not anymore. They are a scary good team. Carmen, like you said, they were a half away from the Super Bowl last year. We've seen the Dan Campbell show for a couple of years now. And I mean, yeah, I'd run through a brick wall for him too. Who wouldn't? I'd bite a kneecap for him. Why not? I'll take the over for the Lions. Oh, right, me.
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. I fired myself up so much Sean. That I forgot that I'm hosting this show.
You fired all of us up, Sean.
We're all going for the over there for the Lions. Moving on to the Packers. Again, what we all, I think, assume are going to be the team that is going to give them the biggest challenge in this division, because last year, kind of slow out of the gate a little bit, and then all of a sudden, hey, Jordan Love is as advertised. And Carmen, I think you came on this podcast this time last year, and you lamented at the fact that, just watch the Packers have a third straight generational talent quarterback. And that's what happened. And what happened? That's exactly what happened. Packers finished 9-8 last year. They won a wild card round and became the youngest team since 1970 to win a playoff game. And now they've got a fair amount of buzz about them. A lot of departures from this team, including Aaron Jones. You've got Josh Jacobs coming in. So this is going to be an interesting team to see what's going out, what's coming back in. But I think it's going to ride on the guy under center. So I'm setting the over-under for the Green Bay Packers at 10.5. I'm basically asking you who's going to win this division. Katie, go ahead.
I have the under. I have 10-7. So close-ish. But
okay.
Carmen, you touched on it. This is another team I'm really looking forward to watching. And Sean, you touched on this. They looked so good the second half of the season. They did have such a slow start. Now, they've had a full offseason to keep building off what they did last year. They look super good in the playoffs, too, obviously. When I looked at this roster to prep for this podcast, a lot of young talent, obviously, but there's a few areas that I don't really love their depth, especially offensive line, maybe secondary. So things can always go a bit south with injuries, but their defense looks like it'll be better, and their schedule doesn't look too bad. I'm betting on Jordan Love this season. I think he's going to keep getting better. They might have something cooking there. I have 10-7, but again, I wouldn't be shocked if it was higher than that.
I want to be very, very clear that this team building system that Green Bay has in place that seems to work every 10 years, or not more than that. How long was Aaron Rodgers there? Almost 20.
Very long.
Every couple of decades. It only works in Green Bay. Green Bay is such a unique team in so many ways. They don't have ownerships. You don't have these pressures coming from the top to necessarily turn over your staff, turn over your coaches, turn over your players as much. And while they are a national fan base, they still reside in Green Bay, which is a town of 100,000 people. And it's just, you get this kind of, there's a track record of success there that nobody wants to mess with, that literally dates back to Vince Lombardi and the years that he was there. And like the attitude when you enter into the Green Bay organization is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's what they've been operating with for this entire time. Now, you look at that and you say, well, Jordan Love was on the bench for the first 3 years of his contract in this salary cap era, in, the inflating contracts of receivers and all these other guys. How can you let that happen? And the answer is most teams can't, but the Packers can. And that's why Jordan Love only took a half of a season to take the reins and just skyrocket this team through the wild card round, stomping the Dallas Cowboys at home into the divisional round. I mean, that was an absolute drubbing. I was there in Dallas for it. The Cowboys had no answer defensively for Jordan Love, even their ground game, but it's because they have so many good receivers. I don't think that you can argue that any of their guys are elite right now, but there's so many good receivers and there's so many options. Defenses can only defend a certain number of guys. And beyond that, it's just hard. And that's why this Packers team is so scary to me, is because Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love have so many options when it comes to offensive weapons. And if one guy goes down or if one guy's doubled up, you have so many others to choose from. It just seems like they have an endless amount of guys. If it's not Jaden Reed, it's Dontavian Wicks, it's Romeo Doubs, it's Christian Watson. And then that's not even counting the tight ends, which Matt LaFleur likes to use so much. And by the way, you have Josh Jacobs now. The thing that I think is going to determine Green Bay's season isn't on the offensive side of the ball, though. It's the defense. The defense has underperformed the last couple of years, so much so that they end up getting rid of Joe Barry, their defensive coordinator. And now Green Bay is going to deploy a 4-3 system for the first time in 15 years. I know that doesn't mean as much as it used to anymore. Base defenses don't matter as much. Defensive systems are fluid. Defensive schemes are very fluid.
Multiple.
But they're multiple. But Jeff Hafley comes from BC as a head coach. Now he's in charge of this defense. Safeties are so crucial to this. And what do? They go out and they uncharacteristically spend money on a veteran safety in Xavier McKinney, who is going to make this whole engine run on the defensive side of the ball. Provided this all works out and this system takes hold. They drafted Javon Bullard out of Georgia. They had a couple of other late round safeties that they took, including a safety running back hybrid. We're going to see how that works out of Utah State. We don't one of the two, one of the Utahs.
Somewhere in Utah.
We're going to have to see how this works out, because I think that they've figured out a lot and they've laid this wonderful foundation on offense, but you need to limit the points scored against them. I don't know. I don't care who you are. So that's what everything rides on in Green Bay for me. But until I don't see it work, I'm going to believe it's going to work. And that's just kind of how I've grown up in Chicago, watching the big bad Packers kill the Bears. It's not quite a rivalry. It hasn't really been in my lifetime, but it's all because of the fact that they have the system that works uniquely in Green Bay and pretty much nowhere else.
Sean's going to like this, because essentially what you just described is the Steelers' dominance over the Browns in the last 20 years. But that's the NFC North.
I was thinking that. Thank you, Nick. I was thinking.
You're welcome. Yeah, of course. I'm man enough to admit that. The beauty of this is they had a phenomenal offseason. Like you said, they're not a team that spends money. They not only spent money, but they also drafted according to need and filled some gaps. And I think that they got better on the back end. And the big thing for me is, you talked about culture with the Lions. Well, nobody's got better culture in this division than the Green Bay Packers. And we go back to the receiving core that Carmen just described. There are no divas. There are no high-paid receivers there, because they invested so heavily in young guys and just trusted their culture and their system that eventually it would produce in tandem with their quarterback. And I have to give a massive hat tip to Carmen, because she was way ahead of the game. Everybody's poo-pooing Jordan Love early in the year. He's self-destructing multiple situations in the first half of the season, including in Pittsburgh, Sean. And they're all saying, oh, they're screwed. They're going to have to find another quarterback. But Carmen was pounding the table for Jordan Love and saying, just give it time, give it time. And God, the flower blossomed at the perfect time, and it was spectacular. And we all just sat back and admired it and thought, how did we not know this was coming? Well, we didn't know because we're all about short-term results, and that's the opposite of who the Packers are. You look at that receiving core with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed, 3 guys that they've just trusted to develop. Like you said, Dontavian Wicks also in there. Adding Josh Jacobs to a backfield that kind of lacks some juice, except for Aaron Jones' mini run of production late in the season, I think is an upgrade as well. They still got A.J. Dillon to pound it between the tackles in short yardage situations, so it was good to hang on to him. And on the opposite side, yeah, you got a couple of rookies that are slotting in to start, one being Bullard, another one being one of my favorite linebackers in this draft just because he's so damn athletic, and that's Edge Cooper.
Yeah.
He's an incredible athlete. Like, the guy is a freaking rocket as a linebacker, incredible closing speed. And this is a defense that was already pretty athletic, but hadn't produced. The fact that you could attract Hafley from Boston College to come over and coach these guys is because they have the talent. And also because I think Hafley knew he might get fired at Boston College before long, but that's a whole other thing.
That NFL money speaks, man. That NFL money and the no recruiting, the not having to deal with NIL, the not having to deal with transfer portal.
Yes, exactly. You're seeing a mass exodus of coaches, and that's a big reason why at the college level. But that really does speak to what they have on the table here. They're young, they're talented, they're hungry, they're not going anywhere. And Sean, what was the over-under at?
The over-under was at 10.5.
Oh, I don't think I said that. I'm going over. Just for the record, I'm going over.
I would like to go over at 11, and not because I don't believe in them, but because in division situations like this, there are only so many games to win. And if the Lions are going over their over-under, then the Packers will be right behind them, and they'll be a better team this year than they were last year. And they're only going to continue to ascend, provided they stay healthy. It's a beautiful thing to watch a coach like Matt LaFleur, who had such success with Aaron Rodgers, and then he loses Aaron Rodgers, and they struggle, and everyone starts questioning him, to then see him trust his process and the results prove themselves. I just love it when that happens, because we are so quick to judge everything and instantly put people on the hot seat and not give people time and patience. And patience wins out when the system is good and the culture is good, and that's the Packers. So I'm going over slightly over.
It's almost like playing in the NFL is hard. And maybe sometimes when you haven't done it yet, maybe you need a little bit of time to acclimate to the league.
Experience matters? What? Where do we learn that? Never heard that before.
Patience is a virtue, but honestly, what have you done for me lately, guys? No, it was really cool to watch Jordan Love, like you said, Nick, blossom last year, and just how rare do we see that just kind of mid-season? You know, if you suck at the beginning of the season, you're going to suck at the end of the season, and that just wasn't the case. I mean, down the stretch, they had to win, 4 games or 4 or 5 games just to make the playoffs. They did that, and then
they won 4 out of their last 6.
And like you said, Carmen, they just absolutely trounced on the Cowboys, which was so much fun to see for everyone that isn't a Cowboys fan. It's
giving McLaren 2023.
What's that?
Huge difference. It's giving McLaren 2023.
Oh, yeah.
The first half of the season to the second half.
We love an F1 comparison. Speaking of, I forgot to kind of read out their schedule. So here we go. Week 1, Friday Night Lights, at home against Philly. That's going to be fun. I wish that
Brazil.
Game was in
it's Brazil.
Oh, that is Brazil. Oh, that is
Brazil.
It's week 1?
Yeah.
Baby.
Putting the season in a different country, which is going to be a really weird thing for the Packers to do. I feel like I can't believe it that the NFL parted with a Packers-Eagles game to be, on international soil, but they're really trying to make the international program work, which we love. So
first of all, I mean, I'm just going to say, like, that game deserves to be like December primetime snow.
Yes. 1,000%.
Either way,
but
yes. Sorry about
on
that.
Friday, only game on that day. All eyes will be on it. Start of the season.
And it's good that there's no major time difference. So 8:15 kickoff for them. I think it's like 9:15 in Brazil. So yeah, week 1 in Brazil against Philly. Week 2 at home, unless this one's in Brazil as well, against Indy. Week 3 at Tennessee. 4 at home against Minnesota. Then they are on the road at Los Angeles for the Rams. At home against Arizona, Houston. On the road at Jacksonville. At home against the Lions. That should be a great matchup. Week 9, heading right into their bye week in week 10. Week 11, they're back on the road against Chicago. 12, at home against San Francisco. At home against Miami for week 13. A 2-week road trip to Detroit and Seattle. Back at home against New Orleans week 16. Week 17 on the road at Minnesota. And then wrap things up with the biggest rivalry that just isn't at the moment. At home against Chicago to wrap things up. I set the over-under to 10.5, and I say this confidently because I think they're going to be right there with the Lions, and it's going to be a waiting game. And it's a shame that they don't get to play each other the last week of the season Normally, the NFL is so good about that, but I'm going to take the over as well. I've got them right at 11 wins. I don't think they're going to win the division, but I've got them right there at 11 wins because, and I hate to, repeat myself, but yeah, culture wins, and Green Bay it just has that culture. I don't even know how to describe it. As a Bears fan, Carmen, that must be so frustrating. Anyone that isn't a Packers fan,
I renounced my Bears fandom a while ago, so I don't have to suffer through this anymore.
Yes.
But growing up, it was a kick in the where every year, twice.
Even
a year.
from watching from the outside in, you're thinking, how did they get away with this again? How did they let a guy sit on the bench for 3 years and he's great again?
I took a lot of heat from Chicago fans defending Jordan Love because I mean, I'm not in the business of saying what people want to hear. I'm in the business of saying what people are telling me. And that was people that, every week in the beginning of the season too, I was asking coaches who had played against Jordan Love, what did you see out of him? How, what do you think about him? Yada, yada, yada. And every single one of them told me whatever it is, he's got it. And you just wait on it. And that's why I was such a bully about waiting on it, because even if you've had 3 years to develop in this system on the bench, nothing compares to live bullets. And sometimes that just takes a while. I think CJ Stroud shattered that for all of us last year, but that's not the norm. He is still very much the exception. And when it comes to starting in the NFL, things just take a little bit of time to get going, but you could see Jordan Love's, recognizing coverage is easier and reading defense is easier and connecting with his receivers easier as the season went on. And there's just no substitute for time. So when we talk about another team in the division, I think we're going last with the Bears, but maybe that grace should be given to that quarterback too. But I don't foresee that happening in Chicago.
You did mention, from people that have seen him play, Nick and I also saw him play. Nick, what happened in his last collegiate game?
He lost to the Kent State Golden Flashes in the Tropical Smoothie Cafe Frisco Bowl, baby.
Yeah, never forget. Go Flashes. I think so. Us three went the over, and then Katie, the Lone Ranger, going the under at 10.5 on the Packers. But I can see why you would put them right at 10. Like we were all around that 10-11 range. Moving on to Minnesota. Holy roster turnover, Batman, is all I can say with this team. Good grief. I'm going to let Carmen do all the nitty-gritty of it. Let me just read out their schedule here real quick. Starting off on the road against the Giants, then at home against San Francisco and Houston. Ouch. This might be a season where, hey, you win week 1, you got that false sense of hope, and then there's San Francisco, Houston, Green Bay, and the Jets to just slap you back down to earth before your bye week in week 6. They're back at home against Detroit. Yikes. Week 7, then the Rams, then the Colts. On the road against Jacksonville and Tennessee and Chicago, back at home against Arizona and Atlanta and Chicago for week 15. On the road, week 16 at Seattle, back at home against Green Bay, week 17. Rounding out the season in the House of Pain in Detroit. So finished 7-10 last year. I don't know what this team is right now. Like I trust in Kevin O'Connell, because he seems like he's a good coach. Gone is Kirk Cousins. Here comes JJ McCarthy. I don't know what this team is at the moment. So I set the over under. What did I even set it at? Again, I'm 7.5. So basically where they were last year. Like I don't know what this team is. So Katie, shed some light, please.
I don't have any light to shed. I also don't know what this team is. And if we're among friends, the Vikings are a bit forgettable to me. They're kind of the Tennessee Titans of the NFC.
Thank you.
It's also, like you said, going to be very strange to see them start a season without Kirk Cousins. But like you said, I just don't know what they are right now. Like when I look at their team on paper, I don't think they look that bad, especially their defense. But this division has definitely gotten tougher, like top to bottom. I think this could be one of the best defensive or divisions in football. I think it's going to be really competitive. I'm curious to see, obviously, the usage of which quarterback and when, but they did pay Sam Darnold pretty well. So I think we'll be seeing him quite a bit, but I'm just not super inspired by this Vikings team this year. I don't know what they are. I have 7-10, but could be way higher or way lower. I didn't know what to do with this one. Carmen, shed some light, because
well, I was going to say that might be their calling card. They're going to bore teams to sleep. They're going to lull them into a false sense
They're
of
the
hope.
Arthur Smith Atlanta Falcons.
yes, forgettable as hell.
So here's the thing. The team won 7 games last year without having a quarterback in the last half of it. And they weren't completely out of playoff contention until very late in the season, despite the fact that they had a revolving door under center. So there's a lot of this roster that kind of insulates against quarterback play. And then on top of that, you mentioned you have Sam Darnold, and you paid him a lot of money, Katie, because you wanted the luxury of patience when it came to your future, which is JJ McCarthy. And I think JJ McCarthy is coming into a wonderful situation for a rookie quarterback, because you're not expected to start right away. But at the same time, you have a landing spot that has so many good offensive weapons, and provided that Jordan Addison doesn't get behind the wheel of a car anytime soon. And then you have a defense that should be a top 5 unit in its 3rd year under Brian Flores, likes to blitz the hell out of teams, even more than Todd Bowles, you know, in Tampa, Sean.
Yes.
But here's the thing: the departures on defense, you lost Daniil Hunter to free agency, sure, but you got Jonathan Grenard, who had 12.5 sacks last year for the Texans. And then on top of that, you get the bonus pick of Dallas Turner, which Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was so excited about. So was Kevin O'Connell. I don't know if you guys saw the video of Kevin O'Connell's face. It's now inspired countless memes. But when he found out that they were going to be able to get Dallas Turner as well, that's a really good 1-2 punch on either side of the defensive line in this pass rush. And it's much more than Brian Flores has ever really had as far as pass rushers go, if you think that Dallas Turner can be a double-digit sack kind of guy. So I'm not worried about the defense. I'm not even worried about the offense. And I really like that Minnesota has set themselves up to have patience with JJ McCarthy, because we see time and time again, when you ease guys into the league, that's when you set them up for long-term success. Not to mention Kevin O'Connell is a former quarterback. Josh McCown is now the quarterback's coach in Minnesota, a former quarterback. I just think that this is a really good development year. But also, this team has a lot of talent on it that it insulates against quarterback play. All you need Sam Darnold to be in the beginning of the season is a game manager. And making that transition to JJ McCarthy halfway through the season, later in the season, I don't really know. But you can afford to let him be completely ready before you throw him out there, because you can win games with this defense. You can win games with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison with a game manager under center. I think they could be at 7 wins pretty easily. So I guess I'm going to go over. I don't think I would go too much more over the 7.5, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them get to 8 wins. I think 9 is probably pushing it, but stranger things have happened, especially when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings. So I was there for their 2022 season that ended against the Giants for whatever reason. You never know what to make of this team, and Minnesota fans know that all too well. Yes. So we'll see. I'm going to go over, not by much, but I also don't think that the Vikings are going to be completely hopeless. And this is just going to be a really tough division.
You knew that 2022 team was full of frauds. Like that was one of the most fraudulent teams we've seen since the 2020 Pittsburgh Steelers show.
I was about to say, please mention that. That was a team of frauds as well. My goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I hated watching that Vikings team just because I knew everyone was all, Vikings. And I'm like, they're frauds. They're not that good. I think anytime that you go into a situation in a season in which you're anticipating a quarterback change at some point, you're in a precarious position. And it's because at the first sign of struggle, all the fans are calling for the rookie. And it's never a good environment to put, around a team that is young, that has experienced a lot of turnover. But on the bright side, they did just lock up Justin Jefferson, one of the few receivers in the NFL who is quarterback proof, who is going to elevate every quarterback he plays with, no matter whether it's Sam Darnold or the guy down the street or Uncle Rico. He's still going to go up and catch some ball that Uncle Rico threw over the mountains, right? So they got that going for them, which is nice. But a lot of this roster, at least on the offensive side of the ball, feels a bit like spare parts. It feels like, hey, we went and got Aaron Jones because the Packers didn't want him anymore, which is better than what we had last year because we didn't want Dalvin Cook anymore. And so I struggle to have a lot of confidence in them. I'm not saying that they're terrible. I'm saying that they finished 7-10 like the Falcons did for 3 years in a row under Arthur Smith, but they're probably a more talented team than that. They do have weapons, obviously. I'm just worried about the whole quarterback situation, how that affects the locker room and just the environment and the feeling, the vibes around the Vikings. So that's my big issue. I don't want to be a JJ McCarthy hater, but like, I feel like him winning a national title and winning all the games with Michigan, which had a phenomenal defense and studs, kind of elevated him beyond his true value. And I worry about his long-term viability. And we'll get there at some point. And if he struggles, you can come back to me and say, you were right. I don't want to be like, he's going to suck, but I just don't feel super confident in him like I do in some of the other quarterbacks in this draft. I felt like he was overdrafted, but I understand the way that the draft works. On the defensive side of the ball, Jonathan Grenard was the ideal guy to get to replace Daniil Hunter. They were like, yeah, Daniil, you can leave. We're going to get a younger version of you that's not quite as productive or as dominant as you, but is ascending. I loved that addition for them. And then you go in the back half, they had some secondary guys who played beyond their, I think, ceiling in the past. I love a Josh Metellus. He's one of my favorite players to watch in that defense. Dallas Turner, to me, coming out of the draft, I was worried about size because he's kind of a tweener if you're going to put his hand in the dirt. But this defense works in his favor, I think. Coming into this 3-4 defense, I think he'll be able to thrive in this scheme and really capitalize on his talent. So I thought that was a great pick. It's not a make or break season for the Vikings. It is a season of prove it, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Please prove it that your decision-making is going to produce for us. And the thing is it's probably not going to produce this year, but I need people to have patience with the Vikings. So I'm going to take the under. I'm going to sit them at 7 again. You are Arthur Smith's Falcons, but you have a brighter future than they ever did because you do have options at quarterback, which is what the Falcons never had with Arthur Smith. Just be patient, Vikings fans. It's okay. Just trust the process because Kevin O'Connell's a good coach.
Let me piggyback off you real quick, Nick, because yes, be patient. You have options at quarterback, but like you said, how good are those options? That's the key to all this. How good are those options? Yes, Carmen, you need a game manager, but you really don't want the assistant manager that got the manager's role just because no one else would take it. You know what I mean? No one else would work weekends and nights. And that might be the case for both JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold. So we'll see what they have. I set it at 7.5, and I actually agree with you, Nick. Damn you for just taking all my thunder. I've got them right at 7 wins. Great minds think alike, I guess.
Bald or hair, still the similar mind in the brain, in the head, in the skull. Anatomy.
We're just telepathy right here. Yeah, I've got them at 7 wins. So much roster turnover, but to go back to your point, Carmen, seeing Dallas Turner with Brian Flores is scary. That scared me.
It's real fun.
This defense is going to be good. It's just what can the offense do? And you just need to get Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, hopefully, like you said, not behind the wheel of a car, the ball. How are you going to be able to do that? That's the question I have. And are you going to be able to do that consistently and well enough to compete in this division, which you're right, Katie, it might be one of the surprise toughest divisions in the NFL. So I'm going to go with the under for the Vikings. I've got them right at 7. But I feel like, with all this turnover and with all, you have a rookie quarterback coming in, you have Sam Darnold coming in, who's just a placeholder. If you win 7 wins, 7-10 again, it's not the worst thing in the world. You can see that working. You're not regressing, and then you can build off that. So I think, this is just kind of a place-holding season for them. And maybe they exceed expectations, which is always fun to watch as well. There's the Minnesota Vikings. Moving on to the last place team from last year. It wasn't the worst season in the world for the Chicago Bears. They finished 7-10. They obviously get the number 1 overall pick because of that trade they had a year ago with Carolina, who ended up taking Bryce Young, number 1 overall. I want to talk about Carolina, but not right now. It's not the time, Sean. It's not the time. It's not the time.
You want to talk about Carolina?
Yeah, I think they're going to be an interesting team. I mean, I want to see what they
No, not today. Not today.
Yeah,
David,
not the time, Katie. Not the time, Katie. Not today, Satan.
Interesting is one way to put it. I don't know what direction the Carolina Panthers are going.
I know, but that's why it's fun. I'm an agent of chaos. It's gonna be fun. Starting off week 1 for the Chicago Bears at home against Tennessee. You want to talk about least watchable games of week 1? There's one of them. Week 2 on the road at Houston. So CJ Stroud, Caleb Williams. That's gonna be fun. That's how they're gonna build it. At least week 3 on the road against Indianapolis. Back home for weeks 4, 5, and 6 against the Rams, Panthers, and Jags. Sorry, not at home. Not at home in Jacksonville.
Jags are in London.
Yeah, it's going to be in London, of course. They're the London Jags. They're the London Jaguars at that point for week 6. Week 7, Bears got a bye, and then week 8 on the road against the Washington, what are they calling themselves now? Week 9 out on the road against Arizona. Weeks 10 and 11 at home against New England and Green Bay. And week 12 at home against Minnesota. Then you're on the road 3 straight weeks. Detroit, San Fran, Minnesota again. That's going to be a tough gauntlet. 16 and 17 at home against Detroit and Seattle. Why are you bunching up all the division games there late? And then at home or on the road, week 18, finishing off the season in the frozen tundra against the Packers. Won 7 games last year. You get the number 1 overall pick. You've got your quarterback of the future again. This isn't a team without talent. I'll come to this later. They still have, potentially a ball and chain at head coach with Matt Eberflus. So, Katie, what are you thinking?
Ball and chain.
What else would you call them?
They'll always be the Washington football team to me, by the way, when you said, what are they called these days?
I almost said Washington football team, and that was a real reaction. What are they even calling themselves these days?
Yeah.
I forget that they call themselves the Commanders, or they might go back to it. I don't know what they're going to, whatever. Anyway,
the football team in my heart. I need all of you to talk me down about the Chicago Bears because something bad has happened, and I'm allowing myself to be excited to watch the Bears, and that makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah,
their roster is better, no question. I'm still deeply nervous because it's the Bears. It's not a perfect roster by any means, but I loved their additions like DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, Gerald Everett. I loved them hiring Shane Waldron for this offense. But like everyone else, the reason I'm tuning in, I just cannot wait to watch Caleb Williams, especially because they've actually worked to set him up. Like the offensive line looks better. He actually has some guys to throw to. Like they had to have learned from how the Justin Fields situation went. Their defense was already pretty good. And like Carmen, you brought up CJ Stroud, and I agree. I think he was the exception. But if you surround your rookie quarterback with as much talent as possible in a short period, like they have, I don't know. I think there's a world in which he's not just a setup for success, but maybe I think they can be competitive. I have them at 9-8. Maybe 8-9, but I'm going with 9-8. And I need someone to talk me down here because I keep accidentally getting excited. And I don't want that to happen.
I did set the line, and I forgot to say it, over under 7.5. So, Katie, you are taking the over on the Chicago Bears. Real quick, Katie, ask me if I have any thoughts.
Sean, what are your thoughts?
And prayers. Carmen, go ahead.
I'm going to actually take the over as well because I think that the Bears can get to a winning season. Given all of the talent that Katie just beautifully outlined there. But again, I don't want to put this generational tag on a guy that we've never seen take a snap in the NFL yet. I'm very wary of doing that. I've been very bullish about not using that term when it comes to Caleb Williams. Yes, he's the best quarterback prospect we've seen come out in the last few years, but we're overusing this term generational, and it's putting undue pressure on guys that are still rookies. I mean, Caleb Williams talked about it in minicamp, how he hasn't used a verbal cadence since high school. That's not something that he used at USC. He used a clapping cadence. Little nuances like that take a while to take hold and to master and all that kind of stuff. The relationship with his offensive line needs to develop. And from people I've talked to, I was lucky enough to train with Tevin Jenkins this summer in Arizona. The offensive line is going to try and make a lot of checks and IDs and stuff like that, identify things for Caleb Williams at the line to take some of that stuff off his plate. But that's still a back and forth relationship that needs to develop. And then you do have this embarrassment of riches at receiver. And
wait. I need to pause you there. When was the last time we said that about the Chicago
Never.
Bears?
Literally never. I've said this.
Musa Muhammad.
I think I said this on Gojo and Golic. Like this version of the Chicago Bears, I don't know her. I've never seen her before. No. I don't know what what this is. I don't know what offense looks like. That's why I grew up a defensive girl, because I didn't have anybody to look up to as far as like an offensive firepower. Like I just didn't. I really didn't. That's why my favorite player of all time is Lance Briggs. Because I'm like, who did I have to look for as far as quarterbacks or receivers or anything? Like there was like one here and there, but like when your best franchise quarterback is Jay Cutler, you've got issues, and the Bears have issues.
Jesus Christ.
So I'm so weary of getting my hopes up, getting expectations high. I think let's just take this step by step with the Chicago Bears. Yes, the defense should be good and continue that momentum from the back half of last year where they had like 18, they finished with 18 interceptions. which is a calling card of a Matt Eberflus defense. Let that stay in place. Let me see the momentum there. Let Caleb Williams get to the rookie numbers that haven't been broken in 70 years of like, what is it? 2,800 yards and 11 touchdowns. That's all
bad.
that he needs to do. It's bad. It's very, very bad. I don't even know if it's 2,800 yards. It might be 2,300 yards. Those are the rookie records for quarterbacks in Chicago. The bar is on the floor, but let him get there. They've never had a 4,000-yard passer. We all know that. They've never had a guy throw for over 30 touchdowns. So we just need to get to these benchmarks, get to a winning record, flirt with playoff contention, and I'm happy. And then you can start talking about actually contending for the division, actually making a playoff run in 2025. But this year is all about the execution because Ryan Poles has set up this roster very well over the last 3 years. It is the best situation I think a quarterback taken first overall has ever come into. But that doesn't mean that there aren't going to still be bumps in the road, and Chicago fans are not known for giving grace to these guys. So just take a breath. Don't expect division titles quite yet. If it happens, wonderful. I'm not saying it can't happen. If it happens, wonderful. But I would much rather be pleasantly surprised than wholeheartedly disappointed. And
thank you.
I keep saying that. Just let's like baby steps, guys. Just take it one step at a time. Especially, we just got done talking about how tough this division could be. Especially when you're sharing a division with the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions, who now have last year under their belts of making playoff runs. They're a little ahead of you when it comes to the culture building and knowing success and all that other stuff. So just get there. Just get there, Bears. Just step by step. That's all I'm asking.
You know, Carmen, I'm surprised by your take just because in the clips that you had shared on social media in previous months, you were a little bit more bombastic about the Bears' potential. And I was like, hell yeah.
That's different.
Look at the Chicago girl coming out.
That is different. She's right.
If this pans out, it could mean everything for the Chicago Bears. It could mean everything for the city of Chicago. I am not going to shy away from the fact that the city is starved for sports success, just across the board at this point.
No, the Cubs won a World Series less than a decade ago. Come on.
And the Blackhawks had a dynasty in the 2010s. Yeah, that's fine. But now we're talking like 10 years ago since the Hawks.
What have you done for me lately?
Like, exactly. And also this Bears team, the way that people still talk about 1985, which is before any of our lifetimes, like the way that this city clings to that. If the Bears could actually win another Super Bowl, the city would absolutely just erupt. And it would be incredible. It would mean so much. It would mean an entire new generation of Bears fans are fed for the foreseeable future.
For another 40 years.
For another 40 years. So I'm not shying away from that fact, but I also am very much like, I need to see this work before I'm going to believe it.
Okay, that's fair. And I, in response to that, I don't really have much of a response because I was ready to take you to task. And now you're like, patience, one step at a time. I get in trouble in Chicago for being the wet blanket. I'm always the wet blanket when it comes to Chicago media because I'm like, yo, pump the brakes. Just let's see it before we really get, don't put the cart before the horse. That's a mature, measured approach on your part. And let me just state, the only time you're ever a wet blanket is when it comes to Chicago sports, because every other time you're the life of the party. Let's not get that confused here. Okay, so yes, with the Bears, I mean, you cannot deny what they did at receiver. Getting Keenan Allen was big. Right. Romo Dunze is a dog and is going to pair really well with Caleb Williams. I mean, ultimately, it does come down to the quarterback, but this is not the worst situation. DeAndre Swift is a big get at running back. They now have some depth at running back. They still have Khalil Herbert. They got Roshan Johnson from Texas the year prior. He's still on that roster as well. They're not, dealing with an empty cupboard necessarily anymore. The defense really came through down the stretch. And if you want to know how they ended up where they did in the standings, it's because of that defense. I mean, look, week 12, they hold the Vikings to 10 points. Week 14, after a bye, they hold the Lions to 13 points to get a massive upset win that nobody saw coming. They lose a close one to the Browns in which they gave up 20. They hold the Cardinals to 16. They hold the Falcons to 17. They hold the Packers to 17 in week 18 and lose 17-9. Now, a couple of those teams in there, not too good, Arizona and Atlanta. But still, what I'm saying is this defense came together and saved Matt Eberflus's job, because I'll tell you what, on the Bears live stream about week 10, fans were going after him. Can't wait to see you get fired. Have you packed your bags already? And, a guy with that good of hair doesn't deserve that treatment, okay? All right, give him a little bit
the
of
glow up this last year with Flus. I just need to say,
it is not to be denied.
A moment. Because
Well,
he is full-fledged, like, zaddy now. And you're like,
we were
where
all
did this come
thinking
from?
it. Thank you for finally saying what we were all thinking.
The stubble, like the
Even
hair,
me.
the coiffed hair, the upgraded wardrobe.
I think both Carmen and Katie, through their takes of Matt Eberflus and the Bears themselves, said the Bears, and I guess Eberflus, are that kid goes to summer break and then they come back from summer break and poof, they're hot.
Growth spurt, yes. Growth spurt,
that's exactly,
just like filled out. Yeah.
I'm correct. That's your analysis of both the Bears and their head coach. Okay, just a second, just clearing that up.
Yeah,
Sean,
that ain't no coincidence.
No. So everything's great in Chicago right now, but Carmen, I'm really glad you said I avoid using the term generational, because that's the first thing I tell people when they ask me, what do you think about Caleb? I say, well, he's not generational, but he's still pretty damn good. And if he could fix his accuracy issues, which there was a big question about whether his hand was hurt during his last season at USC or not, then I think he could be very good. He's not stepping into a situation that Justin Fields was placed in, which is great. No. Ultimately, it will come down to him, though. And we know the pressure that's placed on a guy like that, and we'll see how he handles it. He's a polarizing figure for a number of reasons that we're not going to dig into because it's way too deep, and I don't even want to go in those dirty waters out there. But I can't wait to see him play and see if he produces. As simple as that. Not going to place big expectations on them. What was the over-under, Sean? I always forget.
7.5.
I had the Vikings. Let's go over. Let's get to defense is good enough. 9 wins. I was going to say 8, but let's go. We're going to hover right around 500.
That's what I have him at. I have him at 9
500
wins.
Longer exists in this league. Thank you, math.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Yeah, let's get wild.
I, too, have got the over. I've got them right at 8, though. I think the Vikings are going to finish last in this division if we're, keeping track of math there. I'm not saying it's an improvement at quarterback necessarily, but it's an improvement at an overall team. Is 8 wins, is an 8-9 season enough to save Matt Eberflus's job? Do you think, Carmen?
That's really interesting. I think it's one of those things where you don't want to have to start Caleb Williams over because your previous regimes have made that mistake multiple times. You go back Justin Fields, you go back to Mitch Trubisky, and you don't want to continue that cycle. So I think that for all intents and purposes, the Bears want to keep Matt Eberflus, and they're going to be as patient as they possibly can. And barring a complete implosion by the defense, I think that Matt Eberflus will keep his job. I don't think that the front office has the overwhelming expectations for this team as a benchmark for whether or not they fire their staff, because they do realize the mistakes that were made by previous regimes, and they don't want that to be them. It's why Ryan Poles took his time building out this roster and now bringing in a young quarterback. So I hope that, and with Kevin Warren in charge, here's the other thing. They have new leadership at the president level, and Kevin Warren is actually now, from the org chart, over Ryan Poles. He is over football as well as the business side. I don't know that when they're trying to build a stadium and all this other stuff, that's a lot for one guy to do. But from what we've seen with the changes under Kevin Warren, the leadership team has changed over. It's much more diverse. There's a lot more perspectives. It seems like overall the organization is heading in the right direction. And I have to think that Kevin Warren wants stability above all else, because that's not something that this organization has had. So I'm hoping that, barring, like I said, a complete implosion, especially by the defense, Matt Eberflus keeps his job. Shane Waldron does what he was brought in to do. He's been able to get, a lot out of multiple quarterbacks, out of different kinds of quarterbacks. He's been able to get stuff out of Jared Goff just as easily as Russell Wilson, Geno Smith. He was responsible for Geno Smith's resurgence of his career. So now that you have a guy with a track record on the offensive side of the ball, this whole thing is a recipe for success, but now it's just about the execution. So I think the Bears are going to want to hang on to Matt Eberflus, but there's a lot of undue pressure put on this organization by the very passionate fans that they have. But I hope that they allow themselves a little bit more patience overall.
Not sure why you had to bring up Steelers legend Mitch Trubisky and therefore Justin
Fields.
Now
Justin Fields
here nor there.
Pittsburgh legend Justin Fields.
It's okay. It's not like there were any other notable quarterbacks available in that draft. So it's fine. Everything is
not at
totally
all.
Not at all.
fine.
No,
That's
terrible
not,
call.
None that
that's
I
not
can think of.
necessary.
No.
Sean, it's interesting though, because the Bears and the Steelers have very similar schedules in that their division games are backloaded. I've never seen anything like this. Bears do not get a division opponent until week 11. And then they have all of them.
I don't know when we're going to do the AFC North, but I have many thoughts on that. And Roger,
the gauntlet the Steelers end with this year is just absolute. It's unlike anything I've ever seen.
It's going to be.
Well, that's what happens when you put games on Christmas.
It's going to be wild.
I don't want to talk about it.
Steelers somehow finish with a winning record again. Not sure. Now tune in next week, kids. Like I said, I've got the Bears at the over at 8 and 9. So should be an interesting season for the NFC North. Do we have any final thoughts for Carmen, guys? We're going on an hour. We want to get her out of here.
Carmen, thank you for giving us your time. You're fantastic as always.
Yeah. Even when you're late, Shook.
Thank you.
He was rerouting his Wi-Fi, Carmen. Thank you very much.
Sure.
As he does at 10 o'clock every time we record.
It wasn't something in my control. Okay.
That's what he says every week.
Carmen, what a bright light you are on this pod. It's such a gift having you join us again. All the listeners love you. You just bring so much to this. Information-wise, also vibes-wise. You don't usually get both of those so hand in hand.
Well, you deserve all of the praise for putting up with these two, Katie. So
thank you. I agree.
Just catching strays out here. She is NFL on Fox's Carmen Vitali. Carmen, thanks so much for joining the Gridiron Podcast. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Say hi to everybody in Tampa for me, Sean.
I will.
Thanks, Carmen.
Okay, bye, Carmen.
And
then there were 3. And then there were 3. All right, that wraps up our first division preview, guys. How are we feeling?
Man,
We've
Carmen's
only got
so great.
7 more to go.
Yay. I thought that was a great start. There's no better way to start division previews than by bringing in an expert, a premier talent like Carmen.
Mm-hmm.
I know. It's almost like we just want to let them do all the talking, and just chime in here and there.
That's why you have guests.
Exactly. It's like we scheduled it that way. Moving on, guys. We have got the return of everyone's favorite game. I'm kidding, Katie. I'm kidding. It's time to move on to the grid side of the Gridiron Podcast. We're talking F1 now. No race this last week. We were at the British Grand Prix the week before, and now we're heading into Monaco, but without walls. We're in Budapest, Hungary, for the Hungarian Grand Prix. Just honestly, the most boring race of the season.
What?
In my eyes.
What?
I mean, Monaco is
the most boring race.
Monaco is technically the most boring race of the season, but at least it's like fun to look at. It's pretty. It's aesthetically pleasing. Hungary is just like, it's the walls are what make Monaco fun. You take those away and you just get bleh. This is a track. No, you can't pass on it. It's a terrible race. You know what? You know what? Prove me wrong.
I mean, I don't drive, so what do you want me to say?
I thought you were about to pull up your
on the
F1 game knowledge. Yeah, I thought you were about to pull up your F1.
It's a tough track. It challenges you in every sector, but it's not impossible to overtake. I don't know what to tell you, Sean. It's gonna be fun. Okay, just give me this. All right, it's not Monaco. It's Monaco without the walls, but it's gonna be better than that.
It's not Monaco. It's Monaco without the walls. Let's get right into
kill the vibes.
Yeah, Sean.
Actually, it's a really good track. All right, let's get into our race predictions because that's all we have between us and getting the heck up out of here. Let's start with you, Nick. Who you got in P3? Or you can, I don't care how you want to do this. Go for it, man.
Let's go. P3 is going to be.
See, the rest of us, we write down our predictions in the rundown. And Nick never writes them in the rundown.
And I nailed them. Silverstone without writing them down.
You did.
It's true. What can we say?
Hey,
the formula works, Sean. Yeah. Thank you. Trust the process. And the process is just winging it. All right. Can't help that I'm just such a genius. Actually, I'm like so big brained that you just can't even comprehend the process. Okay. I don't want to go what I went with last week, but I just feel really good about Mercedes again.
Okay.
I'm gonna go P1 to P3. Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, George Russell. Sorry, McLaren guy. That's it.
All right, Katie.
I'm hoping Mercedes is going to be just as good, but I kind of feel like Ferrari's going to sneak in a little bit this week. So P3, I have Charles. There's a big part of him where it feels like your luck just has to turn around soon. I don't know if it ever will, but their car seems to do better on a track with low speed sections. Like I think track wise, this might be a bit of a better shot for them to not get back in the mix like at the very front. But I don't think P1 for Charles, but I think a podium is within reach. P2 Max, I think they're bringing upgrades to this race, but I don't know. I'm just happy that it's not automatic Max P1 for us again all the time. And P1, I have Lando. I think this track will also suit McLaren. And as we've talked about, they've also deeply embarrassed themselves a lot lately, and they know how much pressure is on them. I kind of feel like they could have a Mercedes-esque weekend where it all kind of comes together, because so many of the issues have been strategy, tires, things like this, lack of communication. So because so many of their issues can be fixed in-house, I'm hopeful that they kind of take this one by the reins. Lando gets another win.
P3, I've got Max Verstappen, just because they didn't really do well and they didn't look great at Monaco. And if we're saying this is Monaco without the walls, I mean, yeah, they're, like you said, Katie, they're bringing upgrades. So I'm interested to see what Max can do, because anytime
Checo's just not even in the picture.
No, Checo's not in the picture. Are you kidding me? Like, you might as well just run one car, okay, and save your cost cap for if you're Red Bull. The other point is, that is still a race-winning car, especially when Max Verstappen is in it. So, he needs to show up and race, and that's what he's consistently done. But again, I don't have a high amount of confidence in that car at this style of track. We'll see. He's probably going to win by like 20 seconds now that I said that. I'm on the same train of thought as you, Katie. I think Ferrari will be impressive here. Same as Monaco. They were quick there. They like the low-speed corners. I'm going Carlos P2.
Yes.
And I think we are going to have a Lando podium. Lando P1.
Ooh.
I'm gonna keep saying it until it happens. Like, I got to be right one of these days. Like, it's getting annoying. But if I'm going to attack this from like a scientific point of view, yes, they were embarrassed globally at the British Grand Prix. They need to respond. They need to figure something out so they're not just in second place again. And honestly, right now, that's probably pound for pound the best car going, like just the most complete car, objectively. So I'm going to keep saying it until it happens. I'll go Lando P1, Carlos P2, and Max Verstappen P3. Heck of a podium.
Boom. Science.
Science this. You know what?
Boom. Science. Yeah.
All right.
Beakers
Let's move on to our
tubes.
final segment of the evening, afternoon, and good night. Hate it or love it. And Katie, we'll start out with you. What do you hate?
I am running my hate back from last week. It is still 1 trillion degrees here, and I'm miserable. I don't have air conditioning at home. I don't have air conditioning at work. I do in my car, which is nice, but I'm barely driving. I'm just like a miserable human being. I'm the worst version of myself when it's above 30 degrees, and every day has been like 35, 36, 37. And
I'm 100 degrees for us Fahrenheit people.
That's almost 100% hot, Sean. That's so hot.
I do know we have some UK listeners, so they probably know what you're saying.
Yeah, everyone else in the world understands what I'm saying, Sean. Everyone else. We know what Celsius
350 million of us that don't.
That's my hate. It's not that deep. I'm just like really unhappy every day with the that's it.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. Nick, would you like to follow that up?
I don't think I have a hate. Honestly.
That's great.
That's great.
Weird.
We love that for you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about something I hate. It's been a pretty cool couple of days. Pretty cool few days. Nah, I got nothing.
I love that for you. It's not my love, but I love that for you.
All right, me too.
Great.
I'm in such a weird place, not having a hate.
Do we?
I don't even know how to respond.
Do we need to do a love? Can we end the
I
podcast there?
I have a love.
Okay, we do need to do a love. Okay,
What's your hate,
my hate. I didn't come prepared, nor do I ever. Oh, you know what?
Whoa.
Extended.
Hold on. Pause it right there. You just got on me for not coming prepared with my podium predictions, and now you come into this next segment immediately after, completely unprepared, just slide in that you're unprepared and think I'm not going to call you out on it?
You come here unprepared.
In
The day of
my
my
house.
daughter's wedding.
On this, the day of my daughter's wedding.
I quickly thought of a hate, though. I'm currently in the middle of a 10 straight days of work just because when I fill in for our weekend anchor, they have to flip-flop my schedule back and forth. So I was off on Monday, Tuesday, and then I went Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So I'm in the middle of a 10-day stretch, and it's just... the days start to run together. It's not often that it happens, but it's a bear. This industry can get tough sometimes. So sometimes I just got to calm down and remind myself, hey, just one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, we'll get through it. So that's my hate. Just 10 straight days of
One
work.
foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking across the floor.
Katie, what's your love?
That was so inspiring.
It's not
Nick,
Nick
that was
singing it.
just beautiful.
Put one
Katie's love
foot
is
in
not Nick's
front
singing.
of the other, and soon you'll be walking out the door.
Chills. That was
is
a
the
haunting
silence I
performance.
wanted.
Do you see the goosebumps right there?
No,
Exactly.
you're welcome.
I do have a love this week. Nick, I'm on the opposite train of you. I'm like, Christ, which hate do I pick this week? I've got so many to pick from. But I do have a very firm love that I've been very excited to talk about. Do you guys know what this weekend is?
Oh, I do. Can I answer? Pick me.
Is it the 2024 Canadian Bocce Championships? Is that what
Yes,
you were
it
going to
is.
guess?
Nationals, baby. This weekend,
Hey.
Katie Caldwell dominates her entire country, which is vast in size, but small in stature when compared to the Canadian Queen, Katie, also known as Kate Caldwell. She's going to dominate you.
Guys, I'm running it back with my team from last year. We've never had a better team. Everyone is dialed in this year. We're giving a little bit of Green Bay Packers. We had a really hot end of the season. Very crushing, disappointing loss because I couldn't get out of bed on Sunday due to personal reasons.
Oh.
I was such a loser. I was so drunk on Saturday. I couldn't get out of bed Sunday. And I let my team down. So as team captain, I have a very embarrassing mishap to make up for. So I have to bring my A game. We trained
Like
for
the
this
anthem
all
singer
year.
from Home Run Derby.
Well, Katie, I think
This is nationals. This is the big
you have a
leagues.
scapegoat. You have a bit of a
that?
scapegoat for your your chaotic friend. That's it.
No.
Anyway,
But yeah, that's what this weekend is. That is my love. My favorite weekend of every year it's called July Fest. It's very aptly named in July, but yeah, it's going to be a big weekend of bocce. I will not be able to be reached on my phone, very likely. I will not be in driving condition most of the weekend. No one's going to hear from me.
We'll check in periodically just to make sure. And if we don't hear from you, we'll assume all is well.
Maybe I'll record an update from the Canadian Bocce Championships for the podcast.
Yes.
I'm excited to hear about your journey.
One thing is for sure, it's always a journey. And I think it's supposed to be a high of 38 on Saturday. So the first goal is not to die. And then the second goal is to win the whole damn
Hey.
thing.
Remember, drink beers and you can sweat them out.
That's
Stay hydrated.
It's exactly what I went for last year's show, and it worked
There
great.
you go. Yeah. Think what's your love?
This week, an 11-year drought
Yeah.
And-
what happened?
when EA Sports released College Football 25.
Talk to me.
And it is a fantastic game. It's even better than I remembered from playing it in May at EA. It is such an experience that I was driving to the gym this evening and I found my head spinning to where like I had to blink my eyes to see straight before I pulled out of the driveway because I was like, all I'm thinking about is College Football 25. It's awesome. Oh, it's awesome. It's the best football game I've ever played. And that includes you ESPN NFL 2K5 stands. It's fantastic, and I'm going to play it as soon as we're done here. I'm rebuilding Kent State. I'm taking Tulane to the national title, hopefully, and we're starting our online league soon. It's so much fun, and I just love it. That's it. That's my love.
I love that for you.
I also
Hey,
love that for you.
I hate it for me that I don't have a PlayStation, so I can't buy the game. I also didn't know, and this is how out of touch I am with the video games. I didn't know that you like don't go to like the store anymore and like purchase the game.
You can.
Okay, but most people just download them now.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I mean, we live in like 2024.
The file size ends up being the same. The disc ends up being an install disc that becomes an unlock key. Like it's not playing it off the disc live.
I know what those words mean.
Nerd
My
stuff.
love is born out of a hate, which is a weird thing to say. But
Most
Nick,
men are.
let me ask you, which NFL fan base do I detest the most?
The Baltimore Ravens.
No, wrong. Both wrong. I've spoken at length about this on this podcast.
The
They're our
Jacksonville
neighbors.
Jaguars.
There we go.
Oh,
The Jacksonville Jaguars, whatever the hell you want to call yourselves, because you don't even know what you call yourselves at times. Okay, I've gotten several emails from different Jags fans saying it's pronounced Jaguars, it's pronounced Jaguars. Like, do y'all even know?
actually.
This year, the Buccaneers have joint training camp practices with the Jags up in Jacksonville. And today I learned I get to go. And I asked my boss, can one of those days I put together a nice fan package? Something out of the ordinary. And he looked at me, and he knows what I want to do because he knows the deep hate I have for the Jags fans. And he said, absolutely. So Jags fans, a whole bunch of Jags, I'm coming. And I love that because it's payback time. All the hate I've gotten on Twitter, over email, talking about your fraudulent fan base, I will expose it now. I'm coming, Jacksonville. Just you wait. And I love that.
It's so threatening. I like
Unleash
it.
your wrath. Unleash your wrath, Sean. Let them all know.
This has been episode 40 of the Gridiron Podcast. Thanks again to Carmen Vitali from NFL on Fox for joining the podcast this week to break down the NFC North. This was week 1 of our 8-part series breaking down NFL divisions. Well, I don't know what division we're going to do next week. We kind of pick last minute. So, well, I mean, we should go like north, south.
Nope.
No.
Don't do
We
it.
just
Don't
go
do it. Don't
all
commit.
over the
Don't
map.
commit.
We
Never
might as
commit.
well just throw a dart at the map, and whichever city it lands closest to, we just take that division. So, guys, any final thoughts?
You're not going to do this as a way to keep me from interrupting you, Sean. This is a great show. Thank you, Carmen. You were the best.
I don't know what you're talking about. As always,
yeah.
you can, like, subscribe, drop us a 5-star review. We'd appreciate that. And drop us an email. Our email is thegridironpodcast3@gmail.com. Thegridironpodcast3@gmail.com.
The emails have been so great so far.
They have been. Thank you
We
so
just
much.
had a listener from New Zealand, Emma, reach out, and that is so lovely hearing all the different places.
It
across the
bewilders
world.
me that someone in New Zealand has like listened to us. Like, that's amazing. Like,
too.
it's humbling, and it's just really cool. And I know most of this is because of Nick Shook's immense reach across the globe with his NFL prowess, but it is cool that has kind of rubbed off on this podcast now too. Do you want to check the comments there real quick, Nick?
The comments. Well, we have Madden talking smack at your 10-day complaint. He said 10 days. Those are rookie numbers. Any response?
Shut up.
And he also said, I was expecting Sean to say the Eagles are his most hated team.
No, I don't hate Eagles fans. I mean, they're annoying, but I don't hate them.
We also had
The
Big
Jags.
B chiming in like an hour ago saying he thought the Lions O-line was mid. We're not even going to unpack that because he said go back, go. We know where his allegiance is.
We know
that,
what his allegiance is like.
That rounds out the comments for the night show.
All right. This has been episode 40 of the Gridiron Podcast from Nick Shook and Katie Caldwell. I am Sean Barie, and as always, live life in the fast lane. Good night.
And to those who find themselves in the wrath of Katie Caldwell's bocce team, may God help you and have mercy on your soul.
May God have mercy on all you Canadians
Good night, Canada. And good
night,
luck.
Canada.
and its territories.